Facebook world. I am seeing we are now live streamed. My name is Vija Williams. Of course, you guys see me every single Wednesday. I am sure you're tired of my face by now. Bob and I were just talking about that because we have Bob Stewart, who you've probably seen Bob's face a lot too. Let's face it, Bob. Like, they've seen our faces a lot.
We've been on webinars, Zooms, 2 years nonstop straight, right?
And whenever you and I do it together, I feel like we're gonna like break the internet.
I don't know.
We're so low.
We should try at the very least. We should try. Yeah.
We're just so low energy. That's our big problem, right? We just are not animated.
Jeff Norris, he's my neighbor, Seattle. I'm in Kenmore right now, Jeff. I can throw a rock to Seattle.
Well, guys, last week I kind of laid the foundation for what I really think everybody's year should be, and certainly what I think first quarter should be. And that is how to get 2 pieces of business for every listings we have. And I call that my 2-for-1 LFL, leads from listings, right? So we laid the foundation, and in laying that foundation and kind of going through the aerial view, there was a whole bunch of things we had to kind of unpack in that, right? And one of the most basic parts of how to get 2 pieces of business for every listing is open houses. One of those 2 pieces of business 100% should come from open houses. It is the easiest, most tried and true way. So then you're only focused on the second piece of business, and the go-getters are going for a 3-to-1 ratio. And if you didn't listen to that or watch that webinar last week, that is a webinar that you should listen to at some point. It's a great one to listen to in your car. Today's, if you're driving, no problem today. Today's is one that I think is better actually in front of a monitor, because we're going to actually go through how to automate an open house. And so I pulled Bob, the expert, our complete expert in this, to really walk us through a lot of the technology of how to do automated triggers, open houses, right, Bob? Different registration options for people, and walk through how we can automate an open house, because part of the 2-to-1 LFL, how to get 2 or 3 pieces of business for every listing we take, right? Part of that is you've got to automate everything you can. Trust me when I tell you automating things is going to make your life way easier, right? So I brought on the expert. You can use what we're talking about, right, Bob, on any CRM, on Command, on Sync, on Conversion, on Contactually, Real Geeks. We use Brivity just because that's like our company tech. So we tend to use Brivity as like our examples, but you can use this on anything, right?
Yeah, totally. And Vija, thank you for having me, by the way. I appreciate it. I have actually I want to share a quick story with everybody about open houses. Vija, you know this, but my mom is a real estate agent, you guys, and she started her real estate career in September of 2016. And in 2017, her kind of first full calendar year in real estate, she did 79 transactions. And in December of 2016, Vija, we tell this story all over in our world, but my mom did 26 open houses in that month. And her goal, much to your point here, Vija, was to get one real buyer or seller out of every open house that she did. And if you were to ask her today, she failed in that goal. She only got 17 real buyers and sellers out of her 26 open houses, but that was 17 people, Vija, that became buyers and sellers in January and February of 2017, right? So, these people and this kind of process we're going to talk about, this is a process Gail deployed back then, and we've gotten even a little bit smarter and better at it since then. But I'm such a firm believer in open houses as a pillar, especially if you're a newer agent, you don't have a bunch of business. My mom was doing open houses for other agents in her office and anybody she could get into, right? They weren't all
Bob,
her
it's
list.
funny you should mention your mom, because his mom is one of our top agents, by the way. She's been Kinney team in Olympia, Washington. And I talked to her last night. And she is, out of anyone in the nation, and if you are someone who resonates with this or know somebody, please put it in chat or message or email me. She is one of the highest level home valuation lead converters of anyone I've ever talked to. Home valuation leads are absolutely part of our LFL. So I talked to her last night to ask her to come on to a Wednesday webinar, and we're going to get a panel. I like.
There you go, Jessica. Jessica was calling for, said, get Bob out of here. Get Gail in here. Get the real superstar.
Well, we want Bob today, but we want Gail for that. But we're going to I want to grab a couple other people. I've actually interviewed Gail before on home valuation leads, and they're really hard. They're you have to be automated, guys. And that's what Bob and I are going to talk about today. It's the reason Gail's secret to success is she's just got everything automated, probably because Bob's her son. So we want Bob first. Okay. See, this. You see the foundation laid. Bob
then we'll bring the big guns out.
We shepherd hook Bob out, and we bring Gail on, right? But Bob's the back end of that. Like, he's got Gail so automated that she was just telling me. I mean, I've never heard anyone getting as many listings consistently from home valuation leads as Gail. And so we're going to have her on as part of this, because every single one of you should be doing home valuation leads. Like, why wouldn't you? And you're going to use your listings. You can use your listings to leverage those when you door knock, when you send these mailers, these open houses that we're going to do today. Everything you do, you can direct them to home valuation leads. So, Bob, let's get started. Today, we're going to.
You know what's cracking me up? There's two people on this thing that have done an open house for my mom, like in the last weekend, or one last year, one last weekend. So she's moved. You know, she built her business on open houses. She's been able to move past that, right? And so now some of the agents on the call today have actually hosted open houses for Gail recently.
That's so awesome.
Right? A little bit of leverage. So, that's so cool.
Well, and now you guys know what's happening behind the scenes with that, right? It's really, really important. I'm just going to, Bob, I just want to give a disclaimer, and I want everyone to listen very, very carefully, okay? If you are watching this on replay or listening to it, we usually have 100 or 200 people live and then thousands watching on replay. So most of our people watch these on replay. Hear me. If you are a real estate agent, you are not going to be good at this. I'm just going to tell you right now. You're going to say, this sounds great. This is a great shiny object. And you're going to walk away, and you're not, you got to pull the Band-Aid off, people. I want you to just pull it off. And right now, look in your calendar and say, I'm going to block 2 hours before my next open house this weekend. And I'm going to turn my phone, and I'm going to do what Bob said in that webinar. And if you just take the time to set this up, and you can just tweak and edit what's already there, guys, you can just tweak and edit it. But most of you will leave this webinar and not do it. And what I want to urge you to is that if you just take a little bit of time before your next open house to trigger this automation, your world will change. And it's January. You're going to see the money this year. Okay, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox, Bob.
All right.
I'll probably get hate mail for that. Like, I mean, no, you said that most of us won't do it, but okay. And I don't mean to say that. I'm just speaking for myself. Like, I wouldn't do it. Okay. So, Bob, we're going to kind of walk through three primary things: registration process, how to get them to actually get onto your CRM in a couple different ways, kind of an overview of an auto plan, some definitions, how to think about auto plans, right? And triggers, and, what's automated versus what's a prompt for you to call somebody. And then what you specifically think are best in class of an auto plan specifically for an open house.
Okay.
All right.
Good. I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay, Via?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. All right. So we're going to come in here. We're kind of live, right? We debated whether to do these from a slide deck or to do it live, and I just assumed do it live so you guys can actually see these tools. And if somebody had a question, we could click around a little bit if they wanted us to. But so this is a website, just like any website that many of you guys have, and this happens to be a Brivity site. On our Brivity sites, when our agents are out and they're headed out to an open house. Now on our place teams, a lot of this kind of what I'm going to do right here is set up by an admin person, and agents are showing up at the open house via, right? And these links have already been created for them, or these QR codes, the things we're going to show you are already created, and the agents are kind of stepping in. But let's kind of walk through what it looks like. I'm probably doing this the day before I head out to my open house. I'm probably not doing it the morning of, because I'm generally rushing around and trying to get signs out and coffee and donuts picked up or whatever the heck I've got going on, right? So the day
So
before.
if you're an admin watching this right now, you guys should own this process, right? You should own setting this up for your agent or for your team.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say we're going to come on to Gail's website. And this is a demo website for us, but we're coming to Gail. Let's just act like we're Gail, right? We're coming to Gail's website and we're going to find the property that we're doing the open house at. So here's a new listing in Issaquah, Washington. Let's say Gail was getting ready to hold this house as an open house on Brivity. And this might be slightly different on the CRM, the website you use. Some of you guys might even use like an open, or what are they, open offer pro, open door. I don't know. There's some different apps out there, right? That people can do these things on. We do it like this at Brivity. We just come in here and we add /open house as a prompt at the end of the URL on the property that we're about to hold.
Bob. Yeah.
Open Home Pro. Yeah. There's apps out there, right? These different things. So once we do that, what's going to happen is this little prompt's going to pop up. It's going to say, okay, give us a little bit of information. We've got a couple different concepts here. Light registration, which is just name, email, phone number. I'm going to do full registration. That's what we'll look at. We actually, when COVID broke, Ben realized we can't do open houses anymore. And we've even created this kind of virtual open house registration where agents could go out and promote a virtual open house. And then if somebody registered, kind of feed them the link for your Matterport tour or whatever that might be, right? Or maybe it's a link that you're going to do a live open house later in the week or something like that. So there's a couple of different options here. I'm going to deal with the full registration option. And then we just got to tell the system, when is that open house? Now, once we've done that, what's going to happen is we're going to get this kind of form, right? And this form is going to be our intake form. And again, if it was a shorter version, which is an option, the rest of these kind of questions down below here would not be present. It would just be name, email, and phone number. But this form right here is going to be the form that Gail uses at the location. So there's a variety of ways I could potentially do this, right? I could use my laptop. On my mother's teams, what they will do is they've got an iPad and an iPad stand. And depending on where they're at, like if they're in Parkland, they might lock that iPad stand up around a table or, like it's secure, right?
We've had those in the past too. Some lock, some don't.
Yeah.
They're like for retail, like they stand up on a single.
You got it.
They're like a pedestal.
Yep. And they, I think Gail's team got them for $50 or $60 on Amazon. Yep. Right. And they just take them from open house to open house. And this could be done on an iPad. It could be done on a Kindle, any kind of a tablet device that has internet. Right. So the form. Now, let's just take a quick look at the form, you guys, and the information that we're trying to kind of extrapolate from these folks as they enter the open house. So, the obvious name, email, phone number, right? Their price range. So this is a $1.5 million house, and they've got the ability to tell us, what range are they actually looking in? How soon are you looking to buy? You're working with an agent. Do you have a house to sell? Now, any of the answers for these questions, when we submit the lead or the prospect into the database, all of these answers are going to come along, and they're going to kind of be on a timeline event inside of our CRM. So, and then this last little option down here, which as you can see is defaulted on, right? It's checked on, is get emailed when similar properties hit the market. We find that about 85% of the thousands of open house visitors that come through our Brivity client websites in a given month are leaving that checked on. So the vast majority of people, whether it be they just don't see it there and they ignore it, or they read it and they think, yeah, I'd like to be updated when similar properties hit the market, right? Now, once somebody fills this out and hits check in, what's going to happen? Well, let's talk really quick about this current price range. So this is what we call it a listing alert. Some of your systems, I know Boomtown calls it an e-alert, right? But it's this idea that we're going to start to drip on this person with what we believe is one of the most effective drip mechanisms that you could have for a potential buyer via listings similar to one that they came and visited you at, right? And
at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, is everybody's a real stalker.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, this might be a neighbor that's just checking that house out, and fine, we'll start showing them what other houses are going to come up around them. This might be a buyer looking in that area. The way that the listing alert will work, and we'll see this in the CRM here in just a few minutes, but the way it'll work is if they do not put a price range in here, it will automatically set up a listing alert to go to them daily for the city that the property was in. So in this case, Issaquah, Washington, and plus or minus 20% of the listing price. So in this case, it'd be down 300,000, up 300,000. And this person would get a listing alert from about 1.2 million up to about 1.8 million if they did not tell us what their price range was. If they did, then the listing alert is going to get set up for whatever they determined their price range to be in these drop downs for the city that the property is in. So let's come over here and let's kind of look back. So, and I'll do this here in just a second. We can watch a live one come in, but a couple hours ago, 2 hours ago, in fact, I did this a couple of times on this same property. So let's go over here for a second and let's look at this open house visitor that I registered, and I registered it right on this landing page right here, right? I filled out open house visitor and an email address and a phone number and all of the information. And so as the contact came into the database, okay, the basic information about it, it adds a tag via for the property that person came into. So later, if I wanted to go call all 10 people that had come through my open house, I could come into my CRM, pull that particular tag up, right? And I'd have a list of all those people that had entered my open house. Here's the basic info, right? Name, email, phone number. We also add a tag for open house. Okay. And then you'll see this auto plan get applied. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's set that off to the side. Here are the answers to those other questions that were on the form, right? And you'll see that when I submitted this form, I actually picked a price range of 1.5 to 2.5 million instead of just leaving it blank, okay? And then you're actually starting in this timeline here to see the results of this auto plan that got applied. And again, let's set that to the side for a second. We're going to come in here and talk, a little bit more deeply about this auto plan. But the other thing that happened on here automatically is this right here, which is the listing alert got set up and sent to that person. Now, if you give me just a second, I bet I could come in here.
Hey, Bob, while you're pulling that up, I want to go back. So, the registration, do you make any of that mandatory, any of the fields mandatory?
The fields are, so let's go back to that form. None of the only mandatory fields are these first three. Okay. They don't have to make a selection in any of the subsequent fields down the page.
So there's no downside in this case to doing the full registration then, because the light registration, this is just like answer the rest if you want, and you're going to have a certain percentage who will answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, 85% of them leave this thing checked. So we're getting, most people are filling these things out, and are they filling them out 100% truthfully via? Of course not, right?
Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute, because there's different ways to get people to register. We're going to talk about that. In the same open house, you can use all three methods of registration, by the way.
All right. So I'm just real quick, I want to think about the time savings here, right? Couple things that are saving us time. First off, if I took this on a piece of paper, which by the way, Via is not a horrible way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. That'd be probably the least efficient of the manners, but getting people's information on a piece of paper is better than not getting their information, right?
100%, yeah.
But if I did get their information on a sign-in sheet or something, when I got done, I would have to come here, sit down in my CRM, right? Pull it up and be like, okay, let me manually enter each lead in here, right? Then I'd probably have to go over and figure out, do I want to give them some kind of a drip plan to try to communicate with these people? And I'd have to figure that out, right? And then I'd have to, if I was doing it, at least the through the systems and models we use, I'd have to go set a listing alert up. And each one of those things individually Via wouldn't be, maybe it'd take me a minute and a half to enter the contact. Maybe it'd take me 3 or 4 minutes to figure out which auto plan I wanted to give them. Maybe it'd take me 2 minutes to set up the listing alert. But if it took me Via 8 minutes a person and I had 10 people, like how many of you guys just have an extra hour and a half on a Sunday when you get home from your open house and the kids are running around and you're wanting to watch the football game? Like a lot of times those people are not going to get in the database.
Well, 100%, they don't get in the database, which is why we had you on, is how can we automate them? And with that said, if 1 or 2 need to be manually written down during the course of your, discovery process, when you're kind of starting to bond with them and getting to know them, I find, Bob, sometimes they'll start off a registration and it's, Mickey Mouse stuff. It's not accurate. But then you bond with them and they like you. And I will try to double up. So what I try to do is I would say, hey, Bob, you asked me about that information. Why don't I give me your cell phone number? I'm going to text you right now and I'll get back to you on that. I just want to make sure I have you programmed in. So now I'm like confirming and I'm doubling up just in case that was a 5551212. Now I've got their number. And then I might even say on their way out, hey, do you want to fill this out? I don't know if you registered or not. You can play dumb. So there's ways that you can build on your registration and just make sure you're checking and double checking that they registered. So I agree with you. It's not scalable. And we want to talk about automating today, but you got to do what you got to do to get people to give you their info.
We have Brivity and Boomtown and Conversion and all that. They have an app, right? We have a CRM app. And so there's definitely, once that contact's in the database, I could pull them up on the app. And if I'm walking through the house with them Via and all of a sudden they start opening up to me and I realize on that app, they left 1212 as the phone number, right? I can easily start to add information about this prospect to the app, right? As I'm going through there. Here's the quick email that I would have got, right? Automatically, including the one listing that they were in, right? That's the listing. And then there's a variety of other listings in Issaquah, kind of in that price range that they had given us, and an ability for them to come back and view a bunch more listings in Issaquah between, in this case, 1.5 and 2.5 million, because that's what I had set as my price parameters. So that's the lead kind of inside the database here. Now, let's shift gears for a second. So that's kind of the form itself. Now, how do we deliver this form Via, right? So I mentioned the iPad scenario where Dale's team puts this on an iPad, and as people walk in, they ask them to type in their information on the iPad there. As COVID emerged, there's people that don't want to touch other people's iPads, or the same iPad that 30 people touched when they went through the house. And so we built inside of, we have a tool called Brivity Marketer, and you can really do this in a lot of places, including, by the way, Google has a really easy way for you to do QR codes, but we built one into Brivity, and here's kind of what that process looks like really fast, right? I get a QR code. I know that I want, if somebody shoots it, for them to go and land on this form and fill the form out. So inside of our Brivity Marketer, I just come over here and say, look, if I'm going to build the QR code, I mean, that's how easy it is right there to have my open house sign in for my, and then I would just literally download this thing and go print it out. And who knows, maybe I laminate it and stick it on the front door. And I have one in one of those little bendy, plastic deals at the kitchen table or whatever. And as people are coming in, instead of having to say, hey, because you might have, in our area right now, Via, you have an open house, there's 25 people lined up out the door, and you don't necessarily want them all sitting there at the iPad, right?
No, but here's my problem with it. This is my skepticism coming in. So I hold up my phone and I'm going to do your thing. I go, okay. And I'm nodding at you and I'm literally going, okay, I registered.
Yeah.
So, which is why if you get in rapport with someone and you think they're a good prospect, do not assume they've actually registered. That's all I'm saying. Make sure that, whether it's pulling up the app per Bob, whether you're writing it, I don't know, but I am saying use a secondary level like approach to try to get their phone number and do it in a way that saves face so that you don't even have to see that, because they're a little embarrassed by now sometimes, right? So I'm constantly looking for the carrot or the hook to get their cell phone. It's like a game for me, Bob. When I'm in an open house, I'm like, okay, what can I get back to the mom? What can I, got it. Hey, why don't I get back to you on this? What's your cell phone number? I'll just send you and I send them my contact card, Bob, so that they have my contact card. All right.
I feel like this, like I saw somebody leave the comment, like, Pat, what do you say? Passive registration doesn't always capture their info. I totally agree, Jeff. Like if I'm a little bit more aggressive individual, I guess. So if I was at the open house, I would probably be watching and asking them to sign in on the iPad. Like I wouldn't be that comfortable because I'm skeptical like you, Via. Yeah. I put a bunch of QR codes up around and I just hope, we do have the app, right? So if somebody walked into the open house and shot the QR code, but I never saw the prospect come in as a lead on my app, I might want to prompt them and say, hey, my mom is, for some of you guys that have met her, she is no BS. I've had people ask the question, well, what if they say they don't want to sign in? I've asked my mother that question. I've interviewed her in one of your offices, Dia, and she's just straight up said, I will tell them this is for the the owners requested this. They're asking that everybody that comes through that we know who they are. And so if you don't want to sign in, we'd love to have you come back with your agent. Like she's literally turned people away who refuse to sign in. And
I'm like literally using my podcast signals. I'm like, wait, you wouldn't know what this meant. This is what we do on our podcast whenever we want to break in. Okay, couple things. This is registration warrants a few extra minutes because it's a really, really important one. There are some people that are listening and watching this. I just did a great listing panel for our brokerages network yesterday. And one of the agents says, I hate forced registration in an open house. It doesn't work. People get resentful. I don't do it, right? I had other people say, well, that's 100% how I do it. So my point is, number one, I am completely with Chris Collins. Yes, I'm with you. Use code, there was a period of time where we had to have people register for contact tracing. I was like, look, COVID has been tough for everybody. Let's at least have a silver lining with this whole thing. They have to register in open houses. That's number one. Number two, builders require it. So if you work for, new construction builders. Number three, some of our sellers really do require it. So I don't think you should be shy about it. Ladies in the room, this is our safety. Like, honestly, I really I want to know who is there. I have every right. If I'm going to walk somewhere.
The guys need to be safe too. Tom just said it's about safety for him too. Like, or at least that's
Tom, you're right. I shouldn't say women. Many men have been assaulted. You're absolutely right.
But that's the reason he gives to the client, right? Tom is, look, this is for everybody's safety. Your safety, our safety, our homeowners' safety.
The thing is, guys, it is a complete massive seller's market. You can force registration and they will come in your open house. If they don't come in, they're not a real buyer. That's just, I just want to kind of empower you. And if you're not comfortable with that, on the flip side of that, and, Bob Walsmith, you and I are in really high price markets. Bob, you're in Santa Barbara, I'm in Seattle. My average personal price is like 1.5, right? So having a 2-person open house, that makes total sense. But if you guys are in a more transactional market and you're just kind of cranking through, $150,000, $200,000 homes, I don't think it always does make sense to necessarily have 2 people at every open house. And I want to be sensitive that every market's different, every area is different. It all works. I don't think you should be shy about forced registration, Bob. I think right now in this day and age, you have a product that people need. If you are doing an open house, they want in. They probably only have that one weekend to get in before it sells. And so I'm sorry. I think that you should be bold and empowered and just deliver it in a way that's not offensive. Humor's good in these situations, but strong.
You say humor, like I always think back to Ben. Ben would say something along the lines of, we want to make sure that nobody's rifling through the underwear drawer and trying to steal the drugs out of the cabinet, please, right?
Please don't. No.
He's a little bit of humor. No, you said this earlier. There's certain things only
that's
Ben
not the
Kinney can get away with saying.
Please don't say that, you guys. Every once in a while, I've got to edit the Ben Kinney scripts, and I'm going to go ahead and edit that one out. Okay.
Right.
No underwear drawer in any scripts.
Miss Proper. Okay. Repeat, that is not
no pooping in the kitchen either. Every single time I do a webinar with him, like I swear to God, that comes
okay.
up.
So let's transition. We've got them. They've come through. They've filled the form out. The record has gone into our CRM. We've had a listing alert set up for them. And you guys saw an auto plan kicked off. And in fact, on my cell phone right now, from that thing I did earlier, there's already 3 text messages. And you guys can't necessarily see that, my little deals, but there's 3 text messages on my phone from this open house already. And had I responded, by the way, those would have stopped. But let's get in here and talk about auto plans for just a minute, Via, okay? Before we even dig into these particular auto plans. So what is an auto plan? And look, and again, that's Brivity's language, right? There may be different language on some of your different systems. But for us, an auto plan is a predetermined set of events, either emails, texts, or tasks for an agent to do something. So it's a predetermined set of events that can be applied to a prospect lead record in our database without us needing to do anything based on a certain set of criteria that lead meets. Okay. So in this case, then how do we fire an auto plan? So the next question becomes, what's a trigger? So there's two kind of terminologies here. An auto plan, which is the things that are going to happen to this contact, and then a trigger, which is how that auto plan is going to get applied.
Well, there's 2 triggers, isn't there? There's how the auto plan gets launched, Bob. And then sometimes there's triggers within the auto plan that trigger next events, like if then that, right?
Correct. That is correct. Yeah. So for this particular example and an open house, what we have in here is we've basically said, okay, we're going to build a trigger. And that trigger is going to say every time a contact comes into our database and it matches this set of criteria. And for this particular plan, they're a buyer. So on a Brivity site, when a lead registers on a buyer type page, right, an open house page, on a listing for sale, something like that, we give them an intent of buyer versus if they registered on your home valuation page, right, looking to see what their house is worth, we'd give them intent of seller. So as long as they're an intent of buyer, their source is open house. And so these forms inside of our website, as they're feeding the leads in, are automatically assigning the source open house because they came from the open house form, right? The status that they have it set as any. Generally, I would say new, right? I want any new leads that come in that meet this criteria. And then if they have the tag open house. So as long as the contact coming into the database meets these 4 criteria, or in this case, they had any, which would be very similar, but it is going to apply this plan right here, the Ben Kinney team open house plan. So you can see in this account, we've got other triggers, right? We don't just have leads coming into our database from our open house. We might have Zillow leads coming in. We might have just regular website leads coming from, buyers from our website, or we've got, a particular plan set up for our Facebook leads. Right. So these triggers allow us to basically look at, where's this lead coming from? What type of lead is this? Does it have any particular tags? Like sometimes we'll run custom ads via where we want to put a very particular plan on any leads that come from that custom ad. And so we'll tag those ads a certain way so that as the leads come in, they have a particular tag.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's what a trigger does, is it will fire one of these plans. So now the next piece then is the plan itself. And so let's get in and look at kind of a plan. And I'm actually going to bring you back here to the lead that we registered. And let me run a little refresh on this page just in case there's been some more progress on this since the last time I refreshed it, because I think there's been another text that had gone out. Oh yeah, look at that. So we're on step 4 of 16 over here on this plan. I'm just going to click right here on this plan. And, again, most of your systems have stuff like this, right? I know Command does, and I definitely know that Boomtown does. And so this is what's happened so far, right? And this starts to get to Via's comment earlier about some things are automated and are just going to happen. Some things in here are prompts for you to do certain things, right? Now, this plan was originally applied. I'm going to go back and show you this because I think this is really important. And there's probably some people sitting in the audience right now saying something to the effect of, wait a minute, what if I had a really great conversation with them and I don't want that auto plan to barf up all that stuff to them if I had a great conversation with them in the house, right, Via? So what we do is when the lead comes in, you'll notice that the plan was applied at 9:46, which is essentially the minute that the lead was generated. So I was in here this morning at 9:46 Pacific, and I entered this lead in the system. So the plan was applied then. But the first thing that happened inside of this plan, the first actual text message, you'll notice didn't send until 11:46, which was 2 hours Via after the person had registered our open house.
Could you have stopped that, Bob, if you wanted to?
Could have, yeah. In fact, so let's say that they came in, they put their information into the data or into the form, shot them into the database, and the plan got applied, right? I have 2 hours now, Via, to come in here and hit pause on this thing, right? To just come in here and go, I don't want that to hit pause. And so our agents, all of our teams have the Brivity app, we call it Brivity Go, right? In there. So if I walked through the house with the consumer, had a great conversation, they were like, Via, you gave them your script that you give them at the end, right? I asked them if they wanted to make an offer and they said no, but you set an appointment up with them for right after the open house. So you didn't want all this communication to happen with them. You would just pull your app open, pull that person's name up and hit pause on that auto plan. And you'd have that whole 2 hours before that first text went out to pause that plan before they started getting that automated communication.
That's great.
Yeah. All right. So let's go in then and let's look at this plan and kind of talk about some of the differences in here between automation, right? These texts that are just firing out without us doing anything. And then the task-based stuff, which like Via, I think so kind of smartly coined, prompting you to do something. Right. So the very first prompt that gets set kind of immediately, it's just a task in there, right? It's something I'll get to the next time, I probably tonight or tomorrow when I get in here to kind of clean things up, right? Was the listing alert that was auto-created, right? Check it out. Like, does it make sense? Did you maybe talk to them and they're not just looking like, look, most of you guys, this would not make sense. Issaquah, Via, if we had somebody looking in Issaquah, we'd know they were also looking in Redmond and they were probably looking out.
Yeah, but we would also set up our auto plan that way. We would know they were looking Sammamish. Yeah, I mean, South.
Yeah, but the listing alert itself is only going to key in right on that one city that they were in. And so I might need to reassess that listing alert. So we just set a task for the agent right away, like make sure that thing makes sense, right? A lot of times you don't get a chance to have a really great conversation with somebody, especially these days in our market, because there's, so many people coming through these open houses.
Well, and like I think about like you all from like Virginia, for instance, right? Virginia's like Seattle. There's just literally city right next to each other. And so you could be looking, we're like that here in like 4 or 5 cities that are just clustered right. Or you don't even know you're driving from one to the next. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that was my task that came due, right? And I've got this task right here to audit the listing alert, I just come in here and go, yeah, you know what? This doesn't make a lot of sense because I know that they'd probably also be interested in Redmond, right? And they'd also be interested in Fall City or whatever, right? And I'd add a couple of neighboring towns around that thing. And then I might just go in there and be like, okay, let's send them out that, right? So tomorrow they start to get stuff from those neighboring cities as well. And I'd be done with that thing. And so I'd check that off, right? And now we can see the progress here where that task has been completed. Now, the automation, any texts and emails that we see in here are going to go out, assuming that there's not a task prompting those. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Okay. But this first text is just, hey, thanks for attending my open house. It's going to fill their name in, right? John, did you see any other homes when you were out and about today that you were interested in? And it's going to sign it with Kyler, right? Or whoever the agent's name was, it's going to sign it with that. Now, the way these plans are set up, we can come in here and kind of look at the settings on this plan. So this is the back end settings of this particular plan. You notice we have some options up here. Things like, do you want the plan to pause if the lead replies to a text message?
And the answer is yes, you do, everybody.
Yeah. If they say something, we believe that an auto plan's job is not to set an appointment for you via, it's not to turn them into your buyer or your seller. It's literally to get them into a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And once they reply, then we want it to pause, because that's where you step in, right? Mm-hmm. That's where, like, you know, for all the AI and the apps and the automation of, you know, the bots and all, like, you're not going to have, those bots aren't going to have a better conversation than you're going to have with that person who you know, bumped into 2 hours previous at the open house, right?
Well, the way to think about it, Bob, is this is marketing, you are sales. So this brings the horse to water, you now have to make him drink.
Yeah. So if I'd have replied, like, I got this text, right? It's on my phone right here. Thanks for attending my open house. Like, pull it up. If I had replied to that, by the way, it would have stopped sending this, right? It wouldn't have sent this next one right here. Now, because I didn't reply, about 7 minutes after the first one, we send, you know, an offer of value, and we are constantly in these, you know, automated responses, trying to offer something that we have that might be valuable to this person. You'll see in this particular example, the Ben Kinney team has really leaned into the zero cost mortgage, right? And they offer that with BKCO Mortgage, and Keller Williams has this with Keller Mortgage and in many places around the country. And that's something really valuable. And for us, that starts a lot of conversations. Like, a lot of people ignore this. They're like, they don't even reply and tell us if they were out looking at any other houses. They just ignore it. But when they get this one, they go, oh, what? Zero cost mortgage, right? Or maybe they reply and say, no, we don't need a mortgage. We're doing cash. Or so that's the next text. Again, they reply to this one. The email, which is set to go out, would not go. The next text would not go. Now, this third text, and I've gotten all these texts, by the way, but the third text is going to go out about 15 minutes after the second one. So 2 hours later, we say this. About 7 minutes later, we say that. And then if they don't reply about 15 minutes later, we do what Ben has so eloquently coined the guilt text.
Yeah.
Right. And the guilt text is basically just like, hey, Jimmy, it's you, right? Like, I hope I don't have the wrong number. You were at our open house today, because I'd sent you those other 2 texts and you're not responding to me. So I just want to make sure I have the right person. And this text gets a massive amount of response. Like, people are like, no, yeah, it's me. Sorry, we were busy, or we're at another open house, right? Or whatever that.
Hold on, Bob. I want to paint the picture. This is so good. So I want to paint the picture. You worked your butt off at the open house. Okay. It is Sunday night. It is like 4:30. It's cold, wet, and rainy. I'm projecting Seattle. Never mind. It's cold, wet, and rainy. You're with your family. You're in your flannel jammies already. You have a hot cocoa with marshmallows, and you forget about everything you did that day, because you're just going to have a night off. And meanwhile, potentially, this is all happening, and you pick up your phone, you're like, I can set 5 appointments for myself in the next day. That's what the beauty is of this.
Yeah. So so as this thing unfolds, then, right, there's prompts. So, like, we have, and on Ben's team, they've actually built the scripts in here. So, you know, we have a lot of our open houses being held in our world by agents that aren't that experienced. So we just give them the script. When you're going to call this person the next day, right, here's what you could say to them. And so there's a task in here to call them. And then there's also a task to kind of change the status, right? Like, yesterday, did you talk to them? Were they really hot? Do we need to really, you know, pay a lot of attention to them? Were they somebody that was just a neighbor kicking around and they weren't going to do anything? They were just curious what the house was listed for, and they're a watch, they're a year or more out, right? We got to make sure we get the status right. And for us, this is really important. We have a lot of kind of systems tied to what status we assign to somebody. So if they are hot, we got to follow up with them once a week. If they're a nurture, which means they're going to buy in the next 3 to 12 months, we have a minimum standard of following up with them once a month. And if they're a watch that's a year or more out, we want our agents following up with them once a quarter. And so getting that person assigned to the right status is important for us. So we put a task on the agent's calendar that next day, you know, right after you give them a call, let's figure out how we should status them, which will indicate to us how we want to maybe potentially set our next plan. Now, in this case, if they haven't replied, right, we didn't talk to them on the phone, because if we talked to them on the phone, what would we do, Via? We'd pause this thing.
We would pause the auto plan.
Yeah. I hear all the time, I have a really firm opinion on this. I hear a lot. Does anybody have a long-term buyer lead touch plan? And no, like, and if they do, it's not helping you, I don't think.
You know what it is? It's a home search. It's a home search. That's your long-term plan. That's all anybody cares about, because everybody's a real stalker.
Yeah.
Did I say that already?
It's a listing
Christy
alert.
Sunquist said that's her new favorite word, though, so I'm going to say it over.
It's a listing alert or home search, whatever, e-alert if you're Boomtown, right? And then in Brivity, we've got another thing that we back it up with called a market report. And so right here, there's a task for them to offer a market report out to that person, right? And so that becomes, based on if I talk to them or if I didn't, if I know they own a house or maybe they're renting, like I may set the market report up for the area they visited me at, right? I might go and set it up for a market report to show them everything happening in Issaquah between $1 and $2 million because they visited me at a $1.5 million house in Issaquah, and I want them to see what's active on the market, what's pending right now, what's sold, and what prices did it sell for via, right? Because some of our $1.5 million listings are selling for $1.9 million, right?
Oh, yeah. Those market reports are incredible. They're the best things that I send hands down to anybody.
We want to educate that consumer about the market where they were looking. Now, if they own something, because look, in our market, Via, it's not very often that somebody comes in as a first-time home buyer at 1.5 million, right? If they're buying in, well, we got, if one of the big companies IPO'd recently around here, that might
We're getting there. It's not, we're getting there.
But generally 1.5, they probably have an $800,000 condo to sell in Bellevue before they move out to Issaquah and give themselves a little bit more land, right? So maybe it's a market report for the area that they live, or maybe it's a market report for the area that they had visited us at. And so instead of automating that, it's just a task for the agent to kind of figure out, like, do we want to do that or not? Now, there's this concept, and I'll show you this. And you mentioned earlier, triggers, Via. You said we trigger the plan in the beginning, but there's also a way where we can say, look, if I'm going to send a text out of here that said, hey, yesterday I sent you a market report for the neighborhood where we met, I wouldn't want that text to go unless I actually did this thing. Set up the market report, right? So the way that we build these is we say, look, here's the text I want to send out, okay? Now, if I wanted this to happen one day after that task was supposed to be done, I would just do like this and I'd save it. And whether that task happened or not, Via, that text would go the next day.
Okay.
But this contingency says, look, do not send this text unless this task that we have it based on has been completed.
Right.
So the way we have this set up is this text will not go until the agent comes in here and says, I set the market report up. And once I check that off, right, I'm in here, I come into my lead. Where'd my lead go? Open house guy, right? I come in here, I'd set a market report up, right? I'd go in and I'd do that. And then once I'd done that, I'd come back here and say, okay, that's done. And when I check that off, and I have to go find that task, right? When I check that off.
While you're looking at that, one of the best scripts, you guys, we can use in sales in general is the did you get script. And you can use it on text, you can use it, in person on phone, but it doesn't have to say, did you get, but it's basically, I sent this to you, did you get it? In some shape or fashion, right? I think those are some of the best excuses to call people, to text people. And it's partly why we have events, honestly, is Teams. It's the, did you get the invite? Did you get the whatever? So I think these are really important, Bob.
So there it is. If once this task comes due, right, I'd just get in here and I'd check, and we got to refresh this page, but I would check that off. And one day later, at whatever time we had this set up for, right, and back here in the settings, we could see this particular text is set to go at 9:15 a.m. So if I check that thing off today, tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. Via, they're going to get the text from me that says, hey, I sent you guys a market report for the neighborhood where we met. Was it helpful? Mm-hmm. And then on we go. So we kind of balance. We text sometimes, we email, we sprinkle in a few call attempts, right? That's the second call attempt on day 5. We had one on day 2, and now we're calling again on day 5. And then, emails and texts, and we're just balancing emails and texts with some phone calls, a little bit of like that kind of trigger automation, right? Where it's like, look, don't send this text unless I do that thing. And this lasts for 17 days. And here's maybe a dirty little secret of Ben's business, right? A lot of the content in here is from our 10 days of pain. Like Ben has this 10 days of pain. If you're on this call, you've at least heard about it, I'm guessing, right? Where when we get a new lead, like it's the 10 days of pain. And we take those same concepts and we just apply those same concepts to an open house, right? So instead of the lead registering and 5 minutes later getting the first text saying, hey, thanks for checking out our website, it's lead registers, and we just back it up to 2 hours and say, thanks for coming to our open house. But later on down here, things like, did I drop the ball? Or, hey, are you still looking to buy or sell? Or, hey, I have a list of off-market properties. For us, that's a big one. We've got the wood sell list, right? Like these are just little things that we're going to make that same ask to an open house lead as we'd make to a Zillow lead, as we'd make to a website lead, as we'd make to a home light lead, right? But we're going to do it automatically. Why? Because you do want to have hot cocoa afterwards with your kids sitting around the fire, commiserating about the rain, right? Like you don't want to be in here doing this for every prospect and trying to figure out what to send them and how to talk to them.
Yeah. And it's way easier to sit and have cocoa in your flannels with your family on your couch. It's easier to sit there and text than it is to try to work a whole sales process like on the phone and do all that. Do you have any stats on this, Bob, at all for place?
Do I have any stats on like
meaning for like every 100 registrations, your average is X amount of appointments or X amount of, buyers or sellers or anything at all? Like whoever.
I don't have any stats on strictly open houses, Via. I've got like big lead stats, which include things like online leads and Zillow leads. And here's how our teams think about this. And it kind of goes back to Gail's deal, right? For every 10 open house leads, we believe there's one person that's going to buy in the next 90 days. Mm-hmm. There's one person that's going to buy in the next 3 to 12 months. And there's one person that's going to buy 1 to 2 years from now. On internet leads, that's for every 100 leads, there's 2 that are going to buy in the next 30 days, 2 that are going to buy in 3 to 12, and 2 that are going to buy 1 year to 2 years. And here's the reality, okay? Almost everybody in this room gets that one that's going to buy in the next 90 days when they come into your open house, Via, because they're saying all the things, right? They want to meet with you after. They're barfing up the fact that they're first-time home buyers and they're excited and they got their mom and their dad with them. And like everybody's going to get that person because they say all the things, Laura, that we know to be listening for, right? Most teams do not get the open house buyer that comes in that's not going to buy for 3 to 5 to a year.
1,000%, you're right.
Right. And they don't get the person that's going to buy 1 to 2 years from now. Why? Because they don't have systems set up to nurture that person over a period of time. Right. I joke with our teams. I train all of our Ben Kinney teams our place teams on their use of brevity. And I joke that like, that one hot lead, by the way, that came into your open house today that you think you're going to close, sometimes next weekend's open house has a hotter lead, Via, and all of a sudden you're like, that guy, and you can't even remember the name of the hot open house lead that came in to your last open house, right? So look, some folks, just because there's this tendency to always want to focus on the hottest one, right? Some of us don't even get that one that might have come into our open house today that's going to buy in the next 90 days.
Yeah, like, nurtures, the way to look at it, the way I look at it is nurtures have to be automated. Now you call them hot, what do you guys call them? Hot watch?
Hot nurture watch.
We did ABC, same to. So our A's or our hots, those are pretty manual. I mean, yeah, you want to automate the prompts and you certainly want to automate everything we talked about, but you better be hands on deck, looking at the hot sheets every day, proactively calling them. I mean, you got to be pretty manual. You have to be fairly manual with your B's or I think you call them watches.
Our nurtures are 3 to 12 months.
Okay. Yeah. I call and nurture anything just without like anything.
So we used to, Jolene and I had an arm wrestling match over this, and I lost. And her reasoning was nurture is something I get my hands on, and watch is something I just kind of keep an eyeball on.
The industry, most people in the industry would call a nurture just in perpetuity, just long term. And those need to be really automated, right? Because those just otherwise you will 100% lose them, right? And so the farther they go up the sales funnel, the more manual it is, right? And so you do want to spend your time, to Bob's point, you actually do want to spend your time with your, immediate people, but you cannot forget tomorrow's rent or mortgage, right?
I'll show you guys a couple of maybe interesting things related to this dripping concept, right? And this idea of like long-term nurtures and here's a great example, an open house lead that they brought in back in March April of this last year, right? This lead's been on our system for 9 months. They clearly didn't buy when they came into the open house. They've been on our website just a ton. Look at, so we've got a listing alert, which is driving all this behavior over the last 8 months. We've got a market report that is actually for their house. Gail, at that open house figured out they got to sell something before they would have bought her open house, and they didn't end up selling it and buying her open house, right? But here's the market report. Look at all this action of them looking at their market report and getting a sense. And we can take a quick look at Jack and Julie's market report here and kind of see here's what's going on around their house, right? This is where they live out there in Alderbrook. Via, and there's a house that sold here recently in Alderbrook, and there's one active and a bunch of pendings around them, right? So Gail's drip mechanism on this person, like she probably, I'm guessing, she doesn't have an auto plan anymore. In fact, the auto plan she had on him was her open house auto plan from way back, right? The communication that's happening here with this person, when Gail texted them 14 days ago, it's being prompted by these people's activity.
That's right.
From the drip mechanisms, right? The drip mechanisms are not the auto plan. That was in the very beginning and got Gail into a conversation with these people. The drip mechanisms are this data, right? Which is the thing you guys have, I think, that they want, right? I mean, it's why Zillow gets 40 million visitors a month via, and there's 5 million houses that sell all year in the
yes, because they're not sending these stupid little like funny copy emails. They're just literally sending you constant data and information. That's what people want.
Yeah. So this is such a great example now think about this lead. They didn't buy in the first 90 days, right? They weren't hot when they walked into Gail's open house, or maybe they were, but they didn't buy. They weren't one of those 10 that she expects to buy in the next 90 days, right? They were somebody that buying for 6 more months, and they were really, when they came into our open house, somebody that wasn't going to buy for a year. But on our teams, we get those deals, and most teams do not get those deals because I got another open house to do this weekend, and then I got to call those people, and maybe I can find that one hot one, but I don't have any systems in place to cover that person that came into last week's open house but isn't going to buy for a year, like Jack and Julie Phillips here.
Yeah, and that's why it has to be automated, to your point, because for all of you guys watching, what if you would have done this? What if Bob and I would have done this last January, and you would have said all of this stuff last January? Ask yourself the question, if you would have been diligently on top of this, like, where would you be today? How would you have lined up your 2022 differently? You would have probably walked into the year knowing, how many people that you were potentially going to get just from open houses, because nobody follows up. It has to be automated. It just has to be. And Bob, any CRM I know, certainly Brivity, you can just plug, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Every single one of them has pre-packaged, automated some auto plans at some level for open houses, right? Yeah. Whether they're good or not, I don't know, but it's probably better than what you're doing now, which is probably nothing.
Look, here's the reality. If you go look at our auto plans, I always joke that we're not Shakespeare. Like they're not these like masterpieces of written, excellence, right? They're just these little prompts where we're like, hey, here's something of value. You might be interested in it. Or we also do a lot of the the guilt text, right? Hey, do we have the right person here? Like, you're not replying. Or like sometimes we send, some of our plans have just a text that just says their name, question mark. Like, then that's like 12 days in. They haven't replied to 4 other texts and they haven't answered our call and ignored our emails. We'll just be like, Via? Question mark. And I'm shocked by how many people reply. And they're like, yeah, who's this? And you're like, that's the agent. I've been texting you every day since you came in my open house like 7 days ago. What do you mean, who's this? But you pick up. And again, the goal of those plans is to get you into a conversation with that person.
That's right. And then the goals and the follow-up, and all of this helps with it. Well, Bob Stewart, it is that time. This was so helpful for me. I've got to believe it was helpful for everybody. Let us know in chat if you thought it was helpful. And keep listening. Next week, we have Frank Klesitz coming on, and we're going to do all things direct mail. The guy is an absolute master at everything direct mail. There are things he has updates for us. He has so many tips and tricks. Like, should you be sending handwriting on envelopes? Literally, he is the master at anything direct mail. You definitely don't want to miss that one. And we're going to keep going down all of these things to unpack as to how you can get 2 to 3 pieces of business for every listing. That is what I'm on the mountaintops talking about. Thank you, Bob Stewart, so much. We really appreciate you. If someone wants to get a hold of you, is it Bob at brivity.com?
No, I'm secret agent. I'm Bob at benkinney.com or bobstewart@place.com. But yeah, or I'm on Facebook all over.
Bob at Ben Kinney or
here's
Facebook.
my cell phone's 408-638-1834. If you want to shoot
I've already forgotten it.
Do that 408-638-1834. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.